Hey everyone, Matthew here, CanadianRenegade.com. What if the problem of carbon dioxide was actually the solution? One of my favorite permaculture principles is the problem is the solution. And an example of that might be, you have your chickens in a chicken coop and they're constantly pooping and you have to go out there and clean it all the time. And if you put them in a mobile coop and you move them around on pasture, then they'll spread their manure out on pasture where you want the fertilizer to be. So that would be a quick example of a permaculture principle in action. So the other day I was listening to the radio and I came across an interview with a Dr. Carlo Montemagno, who is heading up a team that's competing for the Carbon XPrize. Now, I had never heard of this Carbon XPrize or even the type of research that he was into, but I was very fascinated and I thought I would share it with you. So Dr. Carlo Montemagno's bio is quite extensive and I'm not going to read it all. I'll put a link in the show. But he has several university degrees, Bachelor of Science in Agricultural and Biological Engineering from Cornell, a Master's in Petroleum and Natural Gas Engineering from Penn State. He was a professor. He has multiple patents, several other degrees. He works in biotechnology and nanotechnology. He was also working for the U.S. Navy as a civil engineer for 10 years. So this is a guy who's accomplished in real life, not just book smarts. So I'm not going to spend any more time on him, but we'll go to the first clip from the 6:30 Ched Ryan Jespersen show.
In layman's terms, can you explain your project?
Well, absolutely. The project that we have is as we all know, the greatest sink of carbon are green plants. Green plants take CO2 out of the atmosphere and they make it into other stuff. They make it into food, they make it into wood, they make it into many, many different things. So that's got our oil from green plants. So the question then becomes is, can we mimic the same process that plants use in an engineered setting? And so what we've developed at Ingenuity Lab was a technology that takes the same sort of metabolic processes that you find in plants, and we put it into a foam reactor. So we mimic all of the things that plants do to take CO2 out of the atmosphere, and we incorporate that in a foam that looks very much like the head of a Guinness. If you look at Guinness beer, you look at the head on top, inside that foam is where all these reactions occur. Because there's nothing alive, all of the energy goes into sequestering the carbon and making products that we engineer out of that. We believe we can make about 47 different valuable chemicals out of the CO2 in the atmosphere off of a flue gas stream.
And how do you see this Guinness foam, so to speak, being used? I mean, specifically in practical terms, what sort of products or applications are we talking about?
Well, we're looking at everything from plastic precursors to pharmaceuticals to nutraceuticals to actual petroleum type products like ethylene glycol.
Okay, so that's pretty amazing. So now all of a sudden this problem that there's too much carbon in the atmosphere and that we need to tax it or we need to pump it into the ground and pay people to do it, now all of a sudden that's not really a problem anymore. And we can create new jobs, new industries, and different products from what used to be a waste product that we'd have to pay to dispose of. So I did a little bit of research on this Carbon XPrize, and it's a $20 million prize. And basically there's, I think, 27 teams competing, doing the same sort of research that Dr. Carlo Montemagno's team is doing. And I looked at the list of donors to the Carbon XPrize, and something that I found interesting, although I didn't expect any different, was that all the donors were private donors. There was a few public companies, but they were generally private individuals that were donating to this prize. And you'd think with such a lofty goal, but like basically the solution to what's supposed to be pretty much the biggest problem that we are facing right now, you would think that the governments could sweeten the pot a little bit, $20 million for the government of Canada or the United States or any other number of governments. It's just change. It's not even like a rounding error. And why not make it 2 billion or 5 billion or 20 billion? Our governments can afford this. If this is really the problem that they're trying to scare us into believing it is, why aren't they making this sort of research a priority? Because it solves the problem. So lastly, I'd just like to go out with a clip of Dr. Montemagno and his view on carbon dioxide and how he thinks a lot like me, that there is such a thing as climate change, but that anthropogenic global warming or climate change is not really the problem that we've been led to believe.
Well, it sounds to me like exactly the type of language that a critic should be putting out there. He said, I don't deny that climate is changing. He says climate's been changing since the world was first spit out into orbit, but he says, but I do question to what extent it's being caused by humans. And of course, some NDP MLAs were in an absolute uproar, suggesting he should be fired.
You should be fired for speaking your thoughts and your mind. I don't understand that.
People aren't going to be able to reconcile, Doctor, that you're this open-minded working in green technology.
One has, I agree that we want to be sustainable, that we want to maximize the utility of all of the resources that we have, that we want to be good stewards of the earth. And if we're going to extract out a resource like our oil sands, we want to extract out every single bit of value out of that resources and have minimal impact on the earth and what we're doing. So that's what we work, what we strive for. And the question about climate change and whether it's settled. I have a hard time believing that any credible scientist will tell you that it's completely settled. They'll agree that it's changing, but if you ask them to pin down and tell you what temperature the atmosphere is going to be next year exactly, and they won't be able to tell you. There is a lot of things that are happening that aren't fully characterized yet.
It's interesting that somebody with the type of pedigree that he has can come to similar conclusions that I have. And I think somewhere between the two polarizing views of there's nothing going on, carbon dioxide does nothing, it's all scare tactics, it's all hype, and then the other view that you're a climate change denier and you're denying the science and you're just a Luddite or whatever. I think somewhere in the middle is a reasonable middle ground, and I think that's kind of where we need to head so that we can come up with good solutions to this problem. So I hope you enjoyed the show and learned a thing or two. I know I sure did. Consider leaving a comment below, like the video, and subscribe. And, have a good evening, and I'll see you later.